And we're live. It is Thursday, the 3rd of July, which is different from the 4th of July. On the 4th of July, there's big loud noises, people don't go to work, fireworks, displays of patriotism. On the 3rd of July, it is just freaking hot. It is 8:00 a.m., which I think is 2 p.m. for the estimable Minna Ålander. Is that correct?
Today it's 3 p.m. for me. I'm in Finland.
3 p.m. Every day it changes a little bit. You got your different time differences. She's in different locations. You can never tell. And sometimes it's daylight savings and sometimes it's not, and sometimes the sun goes down at all and sometimes it doesn't. This is what happens when you deal with Nordic peoples. It is a day in Washington in which, once again, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping. Jokes aside, it is not actually going to be too hot today. It's going to be rather pleasant. It's going to be a great frickin' day, and you are watching Dog Shirt TV, a goddamn revolution in afternoon television. And one of the revolutionary features is that we don't know whether we're on at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. It sort of depends on the location of our guest and the position of the Earth relative to the sun. And another one of the revolutionary features is that Minna Ålander's summer school program is done, and therefore she can join us. And a third one of the revolutionary features is that Holly can just pop in from a tent in Kenya. Holly, what?
Oh, I'm not at a tent anymore. I'm at a lodge. I'm in my hometown. I'm back home and staying at the beautiful Aberdare Country Club. And it's the Kenyan Highlands at their best.
And what time is it in the Kenyan Highlands?
It is 3 p.m. and it's
we're
a beautiful.
in the same
it's probably
time zone.
Oh, how about that, Minna? It's gorgeous, sunny. It's about 70 degrees. I mean, it doesn't get any better. Everything is verdant. The coffee is outstanding. I don't know what y'all are doing living in another place. I don't know why anybody would not be here. So
Minna, we're getting a slight echo from your channel when Holly is talking. Don't worry about it. Just keep yourself muted when you're not talking.
Am I causing problems?
Always. Holly, I want to ask you about the perfect cheetah, because you sent me yesterday.
That was quite a drama.
You sent me a perfect cheetah, and I think the perfect cheetah requires a few words of explanation.
Yeah, so that was actually quite the drama that unfolded in front of us.
I will show the perfect cheetah while we're talking.
Yeah, I sent you a few pictures that sort of outline the whole drama. But basically, we were in Samburu Park, which is in northern Kenya. It's a beautiful semi-desert, mountainous semi-desert. It's just a beautiful place. More remote, fewer tourists up there. And I've never seen a cheetah up there. But it was getting to be dusk, and we were about to head in from our game drive. And then we spotted a cheetah like walking across the plain, and the area was full of other game as well, including a herd of oryx, which is an antelope that is found in the Middle East, but also in northern Kenya and northeastern Africa. And they're too big for a cheetah to kill. They're like a lion could bring down an oryx, but a cheetah is actually quite slight. And so they prefer small game, and an oryx is big. Anyway, the oryx became very nervous nonetheless, and they began to just basically stalk the cheetah as a herd. They moved as like a phalanx, and the cheetah was trying to hunt this other antelope that's more within what they can take down. And the oryx warned the other animals Um, and I'm doing a podcast. The oryx like warned the other animals of the cheetah's presence and like
That
ruined the
seems
whole hunt.
unsporting of it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to protect yourself. We all got to do what we got to do, but depriving
No,
a
it
cheetah
was,
of its dinner, it just seems mean.
yeah. And cheetahs are, again, they're very fast, but they're really not very big, and they're not. Hyenas take their food all the time. Other lions take their food all the time. They live a rather precarious existence. So these oryx
And
were
they're all
really
genetically
being,
identical.
I guess, I don't know. I'm sure their
No, it's
spot
true.
patterns vary. Is it true?
They have one of the least, so about 30,000 years ago, some disease wiped out all cheetahs in the world except like two or three. And so all cheetahs are descended from a very small number of cheetahs, and they all have about as much genetic material in common as identical twins, humans.
Huh. Well, they're
They're
gorgeous. They're my absolute favorite. I love
they're
to see them, and I've
really,
seen them,
really
and I have
genetically
seen them hunt.
precarious, kind of like Icelanders.
I've seen them hunt, and I've seen them take things down. They're impressive. I've seen them run in like full speed, and it is impressive. But this guy was being thwarted by the oryx. They really moved on him, like again, like really a phalanx of
And
like
oryx
almost a
have
military
like
regiment.
really sharp, pointy horns.
Yeah, they do.
I don't know
They're
what they
big,
do
and
with
they're
them.
yeah, I think the oryx are very decorative. Like both the male and the female look alike with horns and the beautiful markings. They're gorgeous animals. I send you an oryx picture for maybe in tomorrow's
It'll be
newsletter.
the beast of the day this morning.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful antelope, but it's too big for a cheetah. And so yeah, so they wrecked the cheetah's hunt, and then the cheetah just I guess just all of a sudden just started digging around in the ground and like popped up with a rabbit, and just settled for a rabbit. I thought it was like McDonald's, like going to McDonald's,
Yeah,
you're
it's
like
kind of what I do when all my
you
plans
could go to
are
a nice restaurant and have a
thwarted.
good meal, but you're
Then you just
tired and
settle for a rabbit.
you just go through the McDonald's drive-through. So the cheetah popped up with a little rabbit, and I guess and it was very anticlimactic because we were sure it was going to like take something down. And then the orcs still were not done harassing the cheetah and kept coming. And then the cheetah got pissy, and the cheetah was like, "Y'all get out of here!" And then sort of chased the orcs away, and they finally like sort of scattered.
It really
So
sucks to be
anyway,
an apex predator when the prey do not accept your status. And you're kind of
well, I wouldn't.
constantly fighting. I mean, this is like what MAGA's like, right? They, you know, half of Mar-a-Lago is always trying to establish that, people actually have to give a shit what they think because, they know that oryxes like us are like, yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, so I guess it's technically an apex predator, but other predators can take their food. So they're like kind of,
See,
they're kind of
it's
the
just
B
like
list.
Mar-a-Lago. You can have your little Bitcoin business, but you gotta give a little bit of,
Yeah, the only people,
tribute to the bigger boss, to the lions and the
the
and
lion,
the and
nobody
the
messes with
hippopotamuses.
lions. Nobody messes with lions, although I have seen a pack of hyena when
Giraffes
it's a
mess with
lion.
lions.
Usually lions are in a pride, at least with a couple other lions. But I did see one lioness that had killed something by herself, and it was just her and the kill. And a pack of hyenas came and eventually drove her off. So a pack of hyenas up against one lion, but otherwise people, yeah, people don't mess with lions either. But other animals don't really mess with lions. And then the other animal that people don't mess with, or people, other animals don't, and people, they're very dangerous to people, are elephants. You don't mess with an
Right,
elephant. You
right.
just don't. The lions will try to get the babies sometimes. But
Bad
I've
move.
seen lions near a herd of mothers and baby elephants, and what happens is the mothers make a circle around the babies with their butts towards the center and facing outward, and they basically make a protective ring around the babies. But sometimes a lion, a pack of, it would have to be a group, a pride of lions working together can get a baby elephant.
Well, I will just say, safari as metaphor for
Did you read my newsletter yesterday?
not yet.
Well, you're like scooping it. I mean, everybody else has already read it. All the other paid. It's only for my travelogue is only for paid subscribers. Congrats! I saw you subscribed. I saw you
did. I
finally
thought I had
subscribed.
already subscribed, but
Yeah,
now it just
likely
falls
story.
into the problem of I don't open my email.
Okay, well, if you read yesterday's, there's all kinds of political metaphors, even though I honestly have no idea what is happening in the world. Is Donald Trump still the president?
Last I checked, yes.
Okay, darn it. I was hoping a hamburger would have finally had its say.
Maybe tomorrow. All right.
Maybe tomorrow. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm gonna go. I hope you are well, and both of you in your respective countries, you've taken good care of my babies. Is the cactus dead yet?
The cactus is still dead. I have not found the right size 3-volt plug for him, but I will. He will be revived by the time you get back.
Really, that's really that's really quite a promise, Ben.
I'm a man of my word.
Minna, how are you? What's going on?
I'm good. I just again missed the echo canceling button. Like, I don't know. I wasn't fast enough and then it didn't work. So now I have to mute myself. Yeah, I'm good. I've been spending time in the high north. I'm still up here, this time in Finland. So it's not too hot here. Southern Europe is really struggling at the moment with like 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. The Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a travel warning for Spain. I think it may be the first of its kind for like hot weather, climate change related. So yeah, I'm enjoying the plus 15 degrees Celsius here, I guess. At least I'm trying to.
How normal is 15 degrees for this time of year in the high north?
Very normal. I mean, we're always lucky if it doesn't snow at midsummer, which was 2 weeks ago, So
Excellent.
it's perfectly normal here.
And what's the and does it get dark at all?
No, I mean, like if we were talking exactly 12 hours later, it would be the same. Like the lights.
So, you grew up there. Does it affect your sleep? Because when I've been up north, like I don't sleep.
Yeah, it can be really like confusing for people who are not used to it. Like I'm obviously, because I grew up here, like it doesn't bother me and I just like really love it. And actually that's sort of like the disappointing part of like nowadays living in southern Scandinavia, because like it does get dark there at midnight. So it felt sort of like a little lame to celebrate midsummer in Stockholm where it does get dark. So for me, summer has always been either warm or bright, because like usually like summer nights, they're either warm or bright, usually not both at the same time. So I recently actually landed in Stockholm. It was sometime in June at midnight, and it was neither warm nor bright. And I was like, this is such a scam. But otherwise, yeah, so I'm used to it. Like, obviously, you need good blinds so that the sun doesn't like outright shine in your eyes at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. or something. But I'm also just like sort of used to it at this point. So like the light doesn't keep me up at night. But it's like, it's really interesting because like that's why like the high north is so intense in terms of the like seasons, that 10 p.m. in the winter is something completely different than 10 p.m. in the summer. Like people just go jogging at midnight, they walk their dogs, like there's still like a lot going on like late at night, because like you just don't feel as tired, you have much more energy. I don't know, in the winter you just really sort of like fall into this hibernating mood a little bit, that you're definitely not too active in the evenings or not as much. So I think that
Yes.
was like the worst sort of like weather adjustment for me. For example, in Germany, where I lived for 10 years, that in Germany it can be at any point in time, at any month of the year, be it December, April, August, it can always be 15 degrees and raining. So that was for me like hard to get used to, because I grew up with like very distinct seasons. So
But like not just distinct, but really dramatic.
yeah.
I mean, so if this were midwinter instead of midsummer in the Finnish high north, what's the average day
I mean, in the winter
at noon?
you have you would have some daylight at noon, and like the daylight lasts like for a couple hours, but then you have like a really long sunrise and a really long sunset. So like people have this idea that the winter is like dark, but it's actually sort of like not as dark as in continental Europe, for example, where there's usually no snow. The snow reflects the light, for example. It makes it less pitch black dark. And also this long sunrise and sunset, they make it very colorful. And especially when it's like minus degrees, the sky is often pink. Like, I don't know the sort of explanation for that in terms of like natural science, but it just happens to be that way. Sometimes you of course also have this like sort of like gray days where you get sort of snow blind, because the sky is sort of whitish, the ground is whitish, you barely can like distinguish the horizon, sort of. But that's like, I personally find it less depressing than continental European winters, where it's like often rainy and damp and just like very dark.
And you
But
grew
we
up in
in Finland, for example,
Rovaniemi, right?
yeah, Rovaniemi. So in Finland we have actually more like 8 seasons than just 4, because we also have the in between seasons that are like also different, because like the midwinter is this like dark period from November to like January, February. But then you have also the spring winter, which is like March, April, where you have a lot of sunshine, but you still have snow. So that's like the best skiing season, for example. Yeah, so it's a lot of seasons, very distinct seasons.
All right, so
Yeah, there's
I'm
a question in
gonna
the
pull
chat.
up. Sorry.
Somebody asked in the chat whether the 8 seasons have names, and yeah, you could say that it's always like the mid seasons are sort of called, like I said, like spring, winter. Yeah, like fall, winter, sort of. So that's what they're called.
Okay, so the only thing I know about Rovaniemi is that it's kind of a Santa Claus town. And that it has this whole industry of like ice hotels and Santa Clauses and
Competing Santa Clauses, yeah.
yeah, so tell me more about it. How did it also I recall that it was mostly destroyed in the Winter War. So how did you end up growing up there? Were your parents ice hotel proprietors or Santa Claus people, or were they among the civilians who did not participate in such things?
So my hometown Rovaniemi actually didn't get destroyed already in the Winter War. It was much later. It was towards the end of the Second World War, in the Lapland War, which was between Finland and Nazi Germany, because previously, during the continuation war, Finland had sort of like cooperated with Nazi Germany, let them use the Finnish territory for Operation Barbarossa and so on. And Finland, at the same time, tried to take back some territories in the east that it had lost to the Soviet Union during the Winter War, in the very early part of the early phase of the Second World War. And then Finland sort of like started approaching the Soviet Union to make a separate peace with the Soviet Union as they started as it started becoming obvious that Nazi Germany was going to lose, and then the Soviet Union sort of like set the condition that Finland has to drive the Nazis out of Lapland, where they had basically had their bases and stuff. And while the Nazi Germans left, they burned down all of Lapland, among all the towns and towns, also my hometown. So there was basically nothing left of the town, and it used to be sort of like mostly wooden houses, so they were easy to burn. And unfortunately, afterwards, it was rebuilt, like from the 50s onwards to 70s and so on, and that was not architecturally a very appealing period. So it turned out quite ugly. So the town itself is not like beautiful or anything, but there's like a lot of beautiful nature around. So that's sort of like we're seeing, and there is sort of like the area where the town hall is, the library, and the theater and concert house. They are designed by the most famous Finnish architect Alvar Aalto. So they are like very much worth seeing, but that's pretty much it. Like otherwise, it's not very nice. And for example, the northern town called Tromsø, where I was until yesterday at this infamous summer school. So it's about the same size as Rovaniemi, somewhere between 60 and 70,000 population. But it's like way cuter, like because it didn't get destroyed. They have a lot of the old wooden buildings, wooden houses left, and it's also kept that like wooden house structure much more. So yeah, it's like a much nicer, same size Arctic town than like in terms of optics, I would say. And yeah, the Santa Claus business has really gotten sort of out of control. Like we had direct flights from 41 different cities in the world to my
And it's
hometown in the winter.
all winter travel, people
Yeah, I
coming
mean
to see
like
Santa
the
Clauses.
week between winter and or the Christmas week up till New Year's is insane. Like traveling here is so expensive. Like I'm not gonna be able to afford it soon. Like it's like just insane because the tourism is also more like high end. So it's pretty expensive to travel here and stay here and
And
everything.
how did this start? Like, why is, this in Rovaniemi rather than in Narvik, or, there's lots of towns, I mean, not that many, or somewhere in Canada, right? There's lots of towns that you could say this is the Santa Claus capital of the world. How did you guys win that particular
If
competition?
I remember correctly, and I'm just like looking this up at the on the site so that I don't so that I get it right. So this has to do with Roosevelt. It's kind of an interesting story. So there's the Roosevelt Cottage, which was the first building in the Arctic Circle. So one reason is that my hometown lies exactly at the Arctic Circle. So the Arctic Circle goes through the town. So there's the Santa Claus villages where the Arctic Circle runs through, and like it's marked on the ground. I mean, actually it shifts a little bit as far as I've understood, but like anyways, it's about there. You can like jump over it and like take pictures, So that's one marketing advantage. And so I'm just reading on the info page of the Santa Claus Village, which I can also send to the chat so that everybody can amuse themselves with this story about Roosevelt. But if this is not frozen, here you go. So Roosevelt came visit. So Rovaniemi actually got aid from the United Nations for the reconstruction, and then First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt came visit, and this first cottage was built for her stay. And that was sort of like what kicked off this whole Santa Claus village village development. But I would honestly also have to read about more details about the story. Any case, now we have a number of Santa Clauses available everywhere. Like one is in Santa Claus Village, the other one is in sort of like an amusement park, another one here in the city center. Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
And what do people do professionally who are not in the Santa Claus business? Like what are the industries of the town the rest of the year? It's a lot of people, 70,000 people to support up there. What are people doing professionally?
So it's the sort of like capital of Lapland. So the region of Lapland is actually really huge in Finland. It's almost 1/3 of Finland. So it's a really big sort of like regional unit. And Rovaniemi is like the main. It's the only sort of like real town up here. And so there's a lot of sort of like regional administration here and regional government. There's the University of Lapland, that brings in like that employs a good amount of people, brings in also like a lot of international students. And then there's like some sort of like also national administration is also located here, such as like this is a funny thing to people not familiar with what a big deal like forest industries are in the Nordic countries. So there's, for example, something that's called forest government. So it's like the forest administration.
Is like, we have it too.
So it's located here. So those are the things. And then there's just like a lot of sort of like businesses, all the rest. So it's actually like not like it's not the struggling economically struggling place or anything. Tourism is obviously has brought a huge boom, and actually it's kind of crazy how we have started having like the same sort of like negative side effects of tourism as like some famous Southern European tourist destinations where they really have issues with like a way too huge number of tourists coming. So basically the city of Rovaniemi doesn't even like advertise anymore for the winter season. They're trying to advertise now for the summer season so that the tourism would get like more equally distributed, and that like the town's population wouldn't triple like every time in the winter week, the Christmas week. So that's becoming sort of like more and more of an issue, especially in the recent years. So yeah, it's kind of wild. It's the wild north. Actually, when I was growing up, we used to jokingly call my hometown the Las Vegas of Lapland, because this was the only place where there was anything going on. And we had actually like quite a good nightlife. A lot of it has died over the past 10 to 15 years, unfortunately, but it used to be a really decent. We had like 4 or 5 nightclubs even, and it was like pretty decent. And one funny sort of like regional feature was that Norwegian conscripts and soldiers from the Porsanger base in northern Norway came all the way down here to party because it was cheaper than in Norway, and also because it was sort of like the only place where there was something going on and it was cheaper. So we had a lot of Norwegian soldiers.
How would they get there? Like
by cars. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a long drive.
Yeah, it is. I sat yesterday like 9 hours on a bus coming back from Tromsø. So yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about what you were doing in Tromsø. What were you studying at the infamous summer school?
So the idea of the summer school was to sort of like bring people from different fields related to the Arctic together. So we had people who study more the natural sciences part, like ocean sciences, climate sciences, and so on. And then we had social scientists, like from like the geopolitical side of things, and then also governance. So sort of like trying to look at the Arctic and the Arctic change, as it's called, sort of like, which refers to not only the climate and environmental change in the Arctic, but also the geopolitical changes. So trying to sort of like bring that all together. It's like admittedly quite challenging, and I think that like this was the pilot, so it'll probably get better when they do this more often. But that was sort of the point, and like it was pretty interesting. And maybe the best part were the hikes. Everybody loved the hikes, and always great for hiking. So that was also one thing. I can't hear you, Ben. Did
And
you
who
mute
puts
yourself?
on a school like this? I mean, Tromsø is pretty remote.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I mean, it's even further north than you guys, and um, I mean, there's a NATO base up there, but I'm not sure what else is there.
Well, technically, it's not a NATO base because like it's like a Norwegian base with some. Norway has like very strict rules about like NATO presence in the Arctic. So if I'm not completely mistaken, it's a Norwegian base with some NATO allies present.
I
So
see.
these
I'm
differences matter for the Norwegian reassurance strategy towards Russia. So yeah, that's how they
I
would
see.
probably correct you.
Well, I know a young man who was stationed at that base for a few
Mm,
winters, and found it completely brutal.
mm,
But I imagine it's lovely in the summer.
yeah.
But so who puts on a summer school like this in Tromsø?
So it was a cooperation between the University of Tromsø. So there's a university in Tromsø, um, and the Japanese foundation. So a lot of the participants were also Japanese. Japan is like really active in the Arctic science community. So they were sort of like there were participants and lecturers from Japan as well. So that was pretty interesting.
Interesting. And how long was it?
10 days.
Wow. Um, so what is on your mind this afternoon as you decompress from Tromsø summer school and bask in the 23-hour sunlight uh, of Lapland in the summer?
Well, actually, I've been sort of looking into because like actually Rovaniemi has become a major hub for military activity in the past 3 years. We have an air base close by and a big artillery exercise range, like live fire range, which is like a rare treat for a lot of NATO allies that don't have that kind of space for live fire exercises. So there's like been a lot of military activity here in the past 3 years, and I think I've told this story, but my mom can basically now tell if it's a Finnish Hornet fighter jet or something else because like they fly so often over the city or the town. So there's that like Atlantic Trident exercise just recently took place. Part of it also here in Rovaniemi airspace, and that exercise was actually pretty historic in the sense that it was the first time that this exercise was organized outside of the territory of the three main participating nations, which are the US, UK, and France. So this is a biannual trilateral like air exercise among NATO's three nuclear powers. And they did it in Finland. So this is like actually like this should have been much bigger news. Like it's actually like super revolutionary when you think about that. Like 10 years ago, even participating in Iceland air policing was a huge scandal in Finland. So like I just can't emphasize it enough, like how far we've come since then. And that's sort of like what I find really intriguing in this whole Trump situation. That for some reason so far, a lot of the like military to military cooperation has proceeded like as usual. There has been so far no tangible impact on the military to military cooperation and the exercise activity and stuff. So the US has been still participating in all the exercises and has remained present. So like you get these like generals commenting in the media who say like, no, everything's fine. Like everybody should stop talking about the US not being reliable. Like we don't see any sort of like changes or something. And I find it intriguing in terms of like why that is. Like, is it just that nobody has mentioned this to Trump so as not to draw his attention to this so that it can just go on without his awareness? Or like, what's up with this? So it's really interesting. And
And how do you read um, the interceptor cut off this week to Ukraine in light of that. I mean, that like I sort of seems to me that things are all normal until the moment that they're not, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
And turning a ship as big as the United States overseas military footprint is it takes many, many knots and nautical miles to do that. And it's not clear at any stage in the curve whether you're at the point where the curve is straightening out or whether the curve is going to keep going.
Yeah.
I don't like maybe the word just hasn't reached US forces in Europe that they're not supposed to be cooperating with you guys anymore.
I think it's all gonna become more clear when the force posture review is done and Europeans expect reductions in the troop numbers. So far as I understood, like this was one of the like positive surprises of the NATO summit. So honestly, in terms of the NATO summit, it's kind of funny, like or tragic comic how sort of like the bar was not only low, it was just rolling somewhere on the floor. So everybody was just like really relieved that NATO still existed after that summit, sort of. And it wasn't the last one. But anyway, so there were some things that
Well, it might
didn't.
still be the last one. It
I mean,
wasn't
yeah.
obvious that it was the
Honestly,
last
I
one.
do think that the further summits should be adjourned for a couple of years. Like, it's just like not a good idea to like draw Trump's attention to the alliance. I think the less he thinks about NATO, the better for the alliance. But so there were some things that came out of that summit that didn't get any attention whatsoever because all attention was focused on this 5% defense spending pledge, for example, and whether like Trump would like commit to Article 5 or not. And one of the things was that the Finnish defense minister announced that the new forward land force contingent that is planned for northern Finland will become operational this year. And he also announced which nations will be contributing to it. And it's a really nice setup, actually. It's all the Nordics on board, sort of like showcasing this Nordic unity and like signaling that the Nordic countries are willing to take responsibility for their region. And my favorite part is that even Iceland is going to be contributing, although they don't even have armed forces. So I'm really looking forward to like
I don't know.
seeing
Don't
what the
tell that to
Icelandic.
the British. The Icelanders kicked their asses in a war once.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to like hearing what the Icelandic contribution is going to be like. So Sweden is the framework nation, and then Norway and Denmark will be contributing, and Iceland in some form. Plus that we will have the two European nuclear powers, UK and France, also contributing. So this is a really good setup, and it also sort of like is indicative of that the Europeans are actually, they are stepping up. They are sort of like ramping up their presence along this northeastern flank. So the US is not going to be involved in this directly. And I think it's very interesting that it is that two European nuclear powers were committing to this. So it's going to be a little different than in the Baltic states, for example, so that it's not going to be even a rotational presence, but more just like for exercises. And with the idea that it can be then like ramped up on short notice should the tension somehow rise or whatever the need sort of appear. But
and what was the administration's reaction to that? Were they just like didn't bother to notice it? Were they?
I don't think that they commented, like as far as I've seen, like, and I mean, like, what would they say? I mean, this is exactly what they're asking Europeans to do, and they're doing it.
Right, except that, J.D. Vance does have a kind of whiplash attitude toward it. When Europeans do what they ask, he gets mad.
Yeah, of course.
And
because
so,
then he realizes how like disadvantageous it is for the US.
yeah, and also
I actually have more on this topic that I wanna point out.
Okay, go.
So, but just the last word on this. So it's sort of interesting also how especially France is really starting to seize the moment, and they're actually going about it in a very good way because like France has had problems with sort of like making statements that have not been well received.
Big statements
little action.
modest follow through.
But now they're not talking, they're just doing. So they are committing to this contingent. They are ramping up their cooperation, especially with Sweden, because like France has identified Sweden as a potential partner in terms of defense industry. Because like, for example, France and Sweden are the only European countries that produce their own fighter jets that are not like international corporations or something, multinational corporations or something.
And the
So
Swedish fighter jet is a terrific piece of equipment. The
yeah,
Gripen.
it's a neat one. Finns used to call it hair dryer because it makes a particular sound, but other than that, it's a good plane. And so France is really interested in ramping up that cooperation, and I really recommend to like keep an eye on the Franco-Swedish partnership and how that evolves, because I think it will be really central for Europe's quest for strategic autonomy, especially because it really sort of like links Northern and Southern Europe in a very productive way. And other things that France is doing, they're working on an Arctic strategy. And I mean, as we already like saw earlier this year, like France was really forward-leaning about Greenland. France offered Denmark to send troops to Greenland, and Denmark was just like, hold your horses, like don't make it worse just now. But then Macron traveled to Greenland in like early June, like about a month ago. And now that Denmark deployed some F-16s to Greenland, France is in on that mission in a supportive role. So France is really sort of like sliding into the
Trump has not had
Arctic.
much to say about Greenland recently, which is a bit of a relief.
Yeah. So this is like, these are, I think that like how France is now sort of like very deliberately and very sort of like in a pretty coherent fashion, like approaching the Nordic countries and building up its presence in Northern Europe. That's really interesting. And I think that now they've found the right way to go about it, which is like less talk and more action. So that's really welcome. And
how has it been received in the Nordics? Is there eagerness to work with France, or is it seen as, big continental European powers that talk a good game but don't actually do a lot in the way of defense capacity building, kind of muscling their way in?
No, actually, like it's really well received. And I mean, France hasn't had the best press in Northern Europe. And this has been something that I've been keeping pointing out, like, look, guys, you're messing it up in so many ways for like unnecessary reasons. And France has, like, the good thing, I mean, comparing, for example, France and Germany during the previous German government, the difference was that, like, Macron and France in general, they went through a learning curve. So they did sort of like get the memo and they changed their approach. And the problem was sort of like mutual lack of knowledge about each other. So, for example, in Northern Europe, really often people tend to forget the three relevant things about France. Like, firstly, that it's a nuclear power. Second, that it's a permanent member of the UN Security Council. And third, that it has overseas territories. And if you forget these three things, then everything that France does looks really unreasonably megalomaniac. But actually, sort of like...
why are the overseas territories relevant?
Because
just
France
a reminder
is...
to everybody that France's longest land border in the world is with Brazil.
Good point.
Yeah, no, it's true. It has the border between French Guiana and Brazil, and French Guiana, I believe, is not even considered an overseas territory. It is a département. It's like considered part of mainland France, except that it's in South America.
And some of them also have the euro as currency and so on. So
no, it's French speaking, and it's like votes in French elections. It's it's not I get it's not thought of by France anyway. And there's a little island and a pair of islands in off the coast of Canada that have the same status, Saint Pierre and Miquelon, that are, you know, like part of France.
Mm.
But what do the overseas holdings matter for this purpose?
Because France is responsible for their defense. And so France needs to be able to keep up some presence in the Indo-Pacific, for example, or like wherever the territories are, because of this responsibility to sort of like come up for their defense. So that's basically the deal, and that explains sort of like why France has this global outlook and has to like sort of like whether it wants or not, it has to have some capability to deploy to the Indo-Pacific, for example. So then when you have somebody like Elbridge Colby, when he wants to kill the AUKUS and come and tell Europeans like stick to your turf, like don't come to the Indo-Pacific, like stay out of it, it's like UK and like France can't just like stay out of it because they have like sort of they have responsibilities there. And then like the other things about France is that like the nuclear deterrent, independent nuclear deterrent, is very different than the British one, because France's nuclear deterrent is completely sovereign and they have actually really maintained it. So that explains also why they always have this like huge pressure to export, because their industry is really sort of like dictated by the needs of the nuclear deterrent. And it's hugely expensive. So that's why they have constantly this huge pressure to export. So it's not only that they are like somehow like fundamentally just like, always thinking of their own interests and always just wanting to sell you something. It's just that they have a huge pressure in the system in order to be able to financially maintain it. But anyway, so
Really
I think like,
interesting. I didn't know any. I
yeah.
didn't know any of that.
Yeah, so see, like it's not only Northern Europe that people don't know about this, about France, but so I think that all of this has been like really like well received now that people have started to learn more about France and France has started to learn more about Northern Europe and so on. So there's this mutual interest that is growing now, and I really commend France for like having really massively improved their approach. So I've been talking to the French for a couple of years now on a pretty regular basis, and try to sort of explain to them that like so I don't know, I'm just like really happy to see that they're actually like doing a good job of this. So yeah, so it's
When
like
when
well
when you
received.
talk to the French about defense matters as a Finn who has near native German, what language do you speak to them in? Is
I have
English the
to I have to admit like that the first thing I always say in French is je ne comprends pas, and because unfortunately I don't speak French, so that has been like I mean I
like the
really would
only
like to
language you
learn.
don't speak? Because you speak Italian too, right?
Yeah, I mean I can understand based on Italian like some French, it helps, but so but that's actually also encouraging because like I've learned that it's not impossible to understand France without understanding French. So actually like France has a worse reputation than the reality. So they are willing to engage with you in English and most of them do a good job of it. So yeah, it's English most of the time. Like not that many French speak so fluent German that it would be very helpful.
And very
Also,
few
I
speak
can't sort of
Finnish.
like imagine trying to translate the French mindset into German. I don't know. Anyways,
Hello, Nastia.
good to see you.
This is
Yes, Minna, I missed you. That's why I showed up.
Oh, same.
Hi.
what's on your mind today.
What is on my mind? Um, I just had a workout. I'm at my gym, so my mind is still in like the meditative state of Pilates. Like I'm yet to have thoughts. So
All
ask me
right.
this in 5 minutes.
Well, I have a question for you that can turn your brain on. A word has begun cropping up in English that is only used by Ukrainians and and is I find fascinating, and I want you to explain it to our viewers.
I
What
love this already.
what does the word unbombed mean? when it
What's
is
the word?
the word is unbombed.
Is that not a real word?
Well, it's a real word, but not the way when Ukrainians refer to people as unbombed.
I have never heard this before.
Oh my
I'm
God.
not kidding. I
I
have
just
never
want to say
heard this
I'm
before.
ahead of Nastia on Ukrainian pop
I've
culture.
I've
Oh,
seen this.
absolutely, you are.
I've seen this as well. So I think that like where the context in which I became familiar with this word was a Ukrainian account, like one of my favorites, Mira of Kiev. Please go and follow her if you
She's so
don't yet.
funny.
She's so
She's so
funny,
funny.
but in a really devastating way. And she was posting like screenshots of this. I don't know where this person was from, but who was sort of like salivating at the idea. It was like a female TikTok account or something. And the point was that like Russian soldiers are really hot, and therefore like when you encounter them in World War
Fuck.
III, you're just gonna be really
Yeah,
impressed.
that's. I wanted to kill somebody when I saw that. It reminds me of that meme. Sorry, I interrupted you, but it reminds me of that meme of like this. It's from some movie that I don't know, which I also should probably know. Of like this guy talking to another guy who's all in blood and in shackles, like Jesus, right? And then the guy who's all fine talking to him is like the Westerner who loves communism, like a little student in the West who is like in the local socialism club, and then the person sitting near him, all in blood and in shackles and in chains, is like any Eastern European who actually knows what communism is. It's exactly the same vibe as this TikTok.
Yeah, so the word unbombed is just a kind of, I don't know if it's used in Ukrainian or if it's only Ukrainians speaking English that use it, but it basically means Western privilege. Like you can say that because like there aren't glide bombs hitting your house every night. Um, and I just think it's a fabulous word. And um, one of my Twitter friends, Kevin, or Blue Sky friends, who's not Ukrainian, but who speaks good Ukrainian and who's a kind of good Ukrainian uh, uh, explainer in on Blue Sky, had a good tweet thread about it yesterday, and I thought it was interesting. That account is at Kevin Likes Maps, and yeah. So I think it's great that Minna and I are both ahead of Nastia on the new Ukrainian
Yes,
slang. Um,
I will concede. I'm very behind.
and you should all follow Mira of Kiev, and also uh, 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 Kate in Kharkiv. I forget what her handle is, but that account is also great from a uh, amusing drinking wine through bombardments kind of perspective.
See,
Um,
I'm behind in all of that, but I can tell you cool stories about Iceland if somebody is interested in that.
all right, cool stories about Iceland. Go.
Okay, I think we're losing Minna. Or is it just me? Or is she lost for everyone?
No, she's
Okay,
here. It's just
weird.
you.
says it says reconnecting. Anyway, in my daily job of reading stuff about the Arctic, I was reading about Iceland, and I kind of thought that, well, now I like completely lost Minna on my screen. So this is really weird.
She'll be
Anyway,
back.
okay. I was reading about Iceland, and my before I knew anything about it, my kind of preconception was that like, I mean, who gives a shit about Iceland? Like nothing happens there. Like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have a military. Like there's no military related politics drama. Boy, was I wrong because
Did you read
supposedly
about the Cod Wars?
no, because that's less dramatic. It's also dramatic. I
You
know
know, they
that
took
from
on the
knowing stuff
British
about
Navy.
Norway.
They took on the British Navy and beat them. Um,
I was reading about the times when the US decided to open up a military base there, and like the drama surrounding it, it was horrific. Like the US opened up, I don't remember when this was, you probably know, but I forgot the timing. But basically the US, the Americans opened the military base there, and it was huge and needed a bunch of people servicing it. And it was like 60,000 Americans who just like suddenly showed up. It was like a quarter of the total population of Iceland or something. It was a really huge amount. And everyone, like all the locals were shocked. But the young Icelanders were very, oh, Minna, can you mute yourself? Because I can hear my
Yes,
echo. Okay, cool. But the young Icelanders were like very intrigued by it and started sort of interacting and everything. And then the women started, going out and the rest of it with the American soldiers. And it caused like a huge shock like within the Icelandic population, which apparently was super not controversial, conservative, which was very conservative and very racist, frankly, like years ago. Don't know about now. And so apparently all the women who like had sex and had babies from like with American soldiers were like shunned. Some of them I think were like prosecuted for something. I need to dig into this more because it's so interesting to me. But it was like a whole like trauma. Like it's a whole thing. Like they refer to it as the situation. Like the presence of American
they named it
soldiers,
after my column.
obviously, 100 years ago. Less than that. But yeah, I was just so shocked. It was like, wow,
So,
I never thought about Iceland, and this is the first story that I read about it. This is dramatic.
so first of all, Iceland is completely fascinating in all ways. And it is also stunningly gorgeous and really just like a great place to fly for a week and rent a car and drive around. It's really amazing. And
We
by
should
the
do
way,
that.
the people are very friendly, and the cops are the best cops to deal with when you project on an embassy. There is a really fun video on my YouTube page of my interaction with the Icelandic police force while projecting on the Russian embassy there. Um, uh, the American occupation of Iceland during World War II is a really interesting story because we Iceland was hugely strategically important because it's basically the only place you could base aircraft other than the UK. That if the Germans had occupied it, they could have run air raids against the east coast of the United States. They couldn't do that because we occupied it first. And so it was occupied, I think, involuntarily, but in the history of occupations, it has this weird distinction of having been quite popular among Icelandics. It's remembered in a kind of friendly way. It was how certain music and dancing came to Iceland. It was how, and so all of that is connected with the story that you're telling, and and of course Iceland, unlike Sweden and Finland, became a member of NATO, I think, at the beginning.
Because the
It,
Americans made it happen, as far as I can tell.
yeah, I mean, it's
Like,
part of the North
they
Atlantic.
needed it. Yeah.
Um, and the Keflavik Air Base, which is the base that is now the main airport of the country, is a lineal descendant of that period. And so it's just kind of it's a very interesting history. And Iceland
Greenland
is.
has very similarly interesting history.
So I don't know the history of Greenland well at all, although I suppose I
I have
should
stories.
probably learn it. Um, Folks, we are
Before
out
you
of
go
time.
invaded,
Well, yeah,
if Tucker Carlson
you
ever
never,
asks you, do you even know what the fuck is the population of the place you're about to invade?
I
You might
do.
as well know,
It's
Ben.
about 50. It's about 50,000, about two-thirds of whom are in the capital. And there are now going to
You're
be
already
direct.
smarter than Cruz, just saying.
Well, that's a low bar. Um,
Yeah, not like it wasn't obvious before.
yeah, and I even know what language is spoken in Greenland, and which is more than Carrie Lake can say about Armenia, because she was asked at her confirmation hearing the other day whether she knows what language is spoken in Armenia, and she responded that it was a very beautiful language and she's heard it, and can you please remind me of the name? And if you think I am making that up, just Google Carrie Lake, Armenia, or search it on Twitter or Blue Sky. The clip is, I think the technical term, freaking unbelievable. Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow. The guest is going to be the very estimable Anna Bauer. We're going to, all wear our Witoad hats. We're going to have fun. And Minna, thank you. It's great to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Nastia, thanks for popping in, and we will see you
I'm
all.
only here for Minabang.
I know, but I like to pretend that it's about me. See you later.